medicine was really made up of a number of core underlying principles. If you think back to physics that you took maybe in high school, maybe in college, the vast majority of your introductory physics class, like the first year of physics, the majority of your first year of physics class is really just the first law of thermodynamics, right? It's conservation of energy. And if you think about it that way, right, there's so many problems that are really just the application of a single principle. When you think of a ball that's rolling down an incline and how fast is the ball moving, right? Really, that's just potential energy to kinetic energy. And a ball moving on a spring is really just the same thing, kinetic energy coming from potential energy. And there's just so many examples of this. And so one of the advantages that I had was that I had a chemistry background. I didn't know anything about anything in terms of actual biology or medicine or things like that. I didn't allow the way that medicine was taught, where it was just a bunch of memorization and just a bunch of like random facts that were thrown up on a PowerPoint. I didn't allow that to move me from my belief that there were still a handful of concepts that could explain the vast majority of what it is that we were learning in medicine, even if they weren't explaining it. So I'll give you an example. So in chemistry, we learned that likes dissolve like, right? If something is polar, it will tend to dissolve things or dissolve in things that are polar. And if something's nonpolar, it'll dissolve things that are nonpolar. One of the many applications of this in medicine is that if a drug can cross the blood-brain barrier, meaning if it is a neurologic drug or if it's a psychological, like a psychiatric drug, it means that it must be able to cross the blood-brain barrier, right? Like if I've got an SSRI and it works on the serotonin reuptake inhibitors in my brain, then it must also cross the blood-brain barrier, right? Because it has to get there in order to have its effect. So if it can cross the blood-brain barrier, it must also be able to cross other lipid membranes, right? Since being able to diffuse across one lipid membrane is basically like every other lipid membrane, at least chemically speaking. And so if it can diffuse across one, it must be able to diffuse across another. So for example, there are some really interesting applications of this. Marijuana, right? We know that marijuana works on the brain. It also must be able to cross the skin. So I remember learning this principle and thinking, oh, well, I wonder if things like alcohol, which obviously affects the brain, they actually do, you actually can get alcohol. You can measure the amount of alcohol that is in your bloodstream, right? Because again, your skin is just, obviously you've got some protein and things on top of it, but it really at base is just a lipid membrane. And so you can end up with so many interesting things, right? Like if I wanted to know if a drug can cross the placenta, right? If I'm counseling a pregnant woman and she's asking, oh, will this drug, could it potentially affect my baby? Instead of having to memorize these long lists of drugs, if I know that the drug works on the brain, or if I can give it orally, or if it's ever given transdermally, I also know that there's a very, very high likelihood that it is going to also be able to cross the placenta and potentially affect the baby. If you understand the why, and particularly if you understand the fundamental concept, now, instead of having to memorize thousands and thousands and thousands of facts, now I just learn one principle and I can apply it and I can basically predict how medicine or the body is going to act in many, many different scenarios. We were talking earlier about inflammation, right? So inflammation increases basically your sensitivity to things. And so again, it would make total sense that inflammation, say in my stomach, would also make me nauseous, right? Because now instead of my stomach needing a ton of food or a ton of distension in order to trigger that nausea reflex, which again, that's one of the major ways that we feel nauseous, right, is distension. If I've got inflammation in my stomach, then the amount of distension necessary to get me to the point of feeling nauseous or vomiting now is much less, right? All of these things make total sense. And instead of having to memorize, oh, well, gastritis can give you nausea, right? Now I know for a fact what things could give me nausea. So it makes retention that much easier because now I'm connecting it to something that I already understand. And instead of memorizing 100 or 1,000 facts, I can use a handful of principles, not only help me use it, but also help me learn new things that much faster. If you're a medical student or a doctor preparing for either the USMLEs or COMLEX or one of your medical board exams, then be sure to sign up for our free 14-step program where we'll walk you through the most efficient ways for you to improve your score in a short period of time. And if you're interested in getting there faster, be sure to book a free call with our team where we'll break down what it is that's holding you back and, if it makes sense, explain how it is that we can help you to get there more efficiently.